here and online. Chayei Sarah has a lot less meat than Vayera. But I will, just for good measure, because I thought I might speak about it Shabbos morning. I did not. But I had mentioned last week that, there was a medrash that Abraham Avinu, failed the Akedah. All right, so it's a medrash Tanchuma. I just want to mention it quickly because I didn't get around to talking about it. The medrash Tanchuma says, right, that Hashem never meant for Abraham to sacrifice Yitzchak. Right, lo alsa alibi, that it never entered my mind, says Hashem, right, that Abraham should sacrifice Yitzchak. Right, now, in that medrash, which again, that's an old medrash Tanchuma, right, essentially Abraham misunderstood the command. Right, so it doesn't sound nice to say Abraham failed the Akedah, so we say Abraham misunderstood the command. But I think that's splitting hairs. Right, so that's the piece from the Medrash Tanchuma. It needs more time than I'm willing to give it tonight. But that is sacrificing Abraham to save HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Hashem never meant it because Hashem could never have commanded it. And Abraham just blew it and misunderstood. So that's the piece that I left out last week. That deserves, again, it does deserve more time. But on we go. Again, Parshat Chayei Sarah is composed of essentially three sections. The opening, which is Merat HaMachpelah, the buying of, right, the cave. That's why Parshat Chayei Sarah is a very big Shabbos in Hebron. Right, very big Shabbos to Hebron. Everyone goes, they go down. And when's the last time you were there? Long time.
15 years ago.
One of the kids was.
Exactly 4 times.
So that actually is more recently than I am. I think mine's 30 plus years ago. But for good reason, it's a very big Shabbos in Hebron. So that's the first part. The second part is, which is the bulk of the parsha, is choosing a wife for Yitzchak, sending Eliezer and Rivka, the whole business. And the end is tidying up, if you will, end of Abraham's life, the taking of Keturah, having more children, Yishmael, Abraham's death, and right, sending Abraham off into the sunset. So we'll do a little bit on each piece. Thought, and again, in the thought of David Tzvi Hoffman. So the first question is, right, why do we need so much detail with regard to the purchase of Me'arat HaMachpelah? Right? Why doesn't the Torah just tell us he bought the cave, he handled well, he bought the cave, or he didn't handle well because he got ripped off at the end, whatever it might be. And that's where they buried them. Right? And simple. And that's the question. Again, it's the question that everyone should ask, and it's the question that he asks, right? Tamua, he says, it's right, it's wondrous, ha-perut harav, right? The multiple details, shibo moser lanu Torah, that the Torah gives us, the back and the forth and all this stuff and the difficulty. What's the point? So before I tell you what he says, I'll open it up we'll open up the floor. Right? What's the point? Why so much detail?
To show to the world that was opinion and we purchased it.
Kosher,
right? So I think, right, Jeff offers the traditional answer, which I think is the right answer, but it's not what David Hoffman likes, but it is the traditional and probably the right answer, is that Abraham is trying to teach us the importance of an acquisition in the land. Right, and the traditional answer goes, right, they didn't want him to own the land. Right, if you look through, part of the handling is, we'll give it to you as a gift. Right, or first they start, just take a burial plot in our land, in our cemetery. Right, what does that accomplish? Keeps it ours. Right, there's no Jewish presence in the land. You can be a guest. You're a prince, you're an important guy, you're a Hashavua guy. We'll give you a nice spot, right? We'll give you but it's not going to be yours. It'll always be ours. And then even when they push past that, it's a gift. Right? When I give you a gift, you're indebted to me. Right? You didn't buy it, you didn't own it, you didn't earn it. You owe me. It's still really not yours. And therefore, the point is, no, Abraham wanted to show us for generations the importance of acquisition in the land of Israel. And I think that's probably right. But let me share with you maybe another perspective. He actually is aware of the perspective. And he says, Ein lahaniach, we should not assume that the intention of the Torah is to show that Jews have a zchut, a merit to ownership in the land. Right now his argument is actually good. He says, what do I need Abraham to buy a little piece of land? What do I have in place?
Hashem's promise.
Hashem's
What do you think?
promise. It actually is not a bad argument. Hashem promised us the land. So and he promised it to Abraham's descendants. So whether or not Abraham buys a little shmekel of land, right? I mean, it's a small parcel of land, is irrelevant to our future ownership in the land. If we accept, right, the Chumash, which we of course do, so that's what we do, then the land is ours because it's promised to us from Hashem. Then that's actually, I still think Jeff's right, but now at least we have to think about it.
Where were his tents set up?
Well,
Aren't they in Israel, in the land? Hasn't he made it to the land? I mean,
He's in the land, but he doesn't.
But he's not on someone else's property and stealing food. So why can't he claim it, is my question.
So I am not actually aware of the real estate
Oh,
law.
okay.
That was
No, I
current
don't know why, that might be.
in
the
ancient
target.
Mesopotamia. I don't know.
It might be the target. to be that way.
Next year, Rosh Hashanah, if anyone remembers, you can ask Shlomo. He probably does know that.
Okay.
Because he did his PhD in various and sundry strange things. So he actually might know that, but I don't know that. I don't know.
what was the suggestion? What was he saying?
Oh, Steve wanted to know, meaning did Avram pitched a tent somewhere? I guess this thing doesn't pick up so loud, right? So didn't he already own a piece in the land? As opposed to just pitching your tent on some kind of communal property.
Mhm.
But I really don't know the answer to that question.
We do know that he dug wells and he owned the well.
Yes, there was, right. So maybe you have to put something into it, but again, and maybe he owned a lot. The truth is, maybe he owned a lot more land, just wasn't important.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to get, it's that particular plot as opposed to any particular plot in Israel.
Maybe.
He's trying to.
But maybe there's
So,
maybe
yes.
there's a lesson in this also that notwithstanding obviously the benefit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's promise will come eventually, we still have to do what we have to do.
100%. And I think that goes hand in hand with Jeff's answer, which is, yeah, Abraham wanted an acquisition of the land made by him with his own hands. I think that's almost a beautiful argument together. Yes, that's exactly the point. So he says that it's more about Abraham than it is about us, that it shows how much faith Abraham Avinu had that he would eventually inherit the land, that he wanted to start now. So that's one piece, but it's more about Abraham than it is for us. The second piece, which is fascinating, and I'm not sure it's true, but partially it is true, right? And this goes to Steve's point that maybe it's about this parcel of land and not land in general in Israel, right? What's special about this parcel? So nothing really, except that's where, right? Abram and Sarah certainly buried there. Yitzchak and Rivka are buried there. Yaakov and Leah are buried there. Maybe Adam and Chava buried there too. Right, that you'll actually, if you listen on Thursday to the YouTube, you can hear about that.
It's Kiryat Arba.
What was that?
Part of
It's
you.
Kiryat Arba.
So hold your suspense and wait till Thursday. Or not, and call me and I'll tell you what it says if you're not going to listen on Thursday. But why blow it now for somebody who might listen on Thursday? So he argues that it would give people coming up from Mitzrayim a deep desire to return to the land because it contained the graves of our ancestors. That's a very hard argument for me to wrap my head around.
Kalev.
So yes, but not the entirety of the people.
No.
I think today it actually gives where's in Rav Goren's autobiography. Did you get that for us, Barry? Oh, he's on. video.
Yes.
Well, thank you. It's a great book.
It's a great book. It's not a,
Fascinating guy.
it's not a terrifically written book. I think you lose something in the translation.
Yeah, it's a terribly written book, but it's a fascinating.
He was such an interesting.
No, he's
He's so
Barry's 100%
interesting.
right. The either the Hebrew or the translator didn't.
Right.
It didn't read as a, but Rav Shlomo Goren is a fascinating personality. And he tells the story how he got them not to give back Hebron.
Yeah.
Right. So that's in the book. And right, Hanan Porat in the footnotes in his book, right, details how he convinced Levi Eshkol not to give back Kever Rachel. So even if it wasn't for the people coming back from Egypt, we have an attachment to those places because they're special places, right? So maybe that's a twist on what he's saying, right? Rav Goren went to great lengths, and I forget who Hanan Porat said he took with him. I can't remember, but it was somebody else, and they literally went, and the political powers that be were going to give them back. All right, but I think people would have been very upset because those become special places because of who is buried there. Okay, so that is that's kind of his major introduction. A couple of other fascinating points before we move on to Yitzchak, finding a wife for Yitzchak. If you look at the beginning of the Parsha, so this is the very beginning, chapter 23, verse 1, Chaf Gimel Aleph. If you have one. I can see it. All good. If you have an art scroll, it's on 106. Right, the Parsha opens Vayu Chaye Samra, right, starts with the death of Sarah, which then, of course, leads us right into the need for a burial plot. But the Medrash takes us back to last week's Parsha to try and figure out why does Sarah die. All right, so what does the Medrash say?
She heard about the Akedah.
She heard about the Akedah and she had a heart attack. Right? I mean in modern terms.
How old was Yitzchak?
That's a good question.
37.
37 or not. There's a lot of
37 is-
conjecture.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Remember,
conjecture.
there's only 40, and 40 doesn't work with the number here.
Right.
37 fits.
37 fits, but there's all kinds of arguments. But that's what the Medrash does. Now that Medrash is it's a very hard Medrash, right? Because what is it saying? Right? Abraham Avinu went at the behest of God and he caused the death of his wife. Like that's a hard Medrash. If you stop to think about it. Right? I mean, does anyone like that Medrash?
It's unfortunate. It's not.
What was that?
No, it's obviously not nice. It's not nice, but we've no evidence that Abraham talked to Sarah about it at all. Torah doesn't tell us that they discussed it.
At all. It goes, I mean, we have no indication
Right.
at all, but the Medrash doesn't say that Abraham did. The Medrash says that the Satan did. Right? Or there's different versions of the Medrash, but essentially word comes back to Sarah and the Satan, whatever it would be, lets her know, and she can't believe, right? She thinks it happened, and some of the Midrashim she thinks it happened, and some of them she thinks it didn't. Rav David Tzvi in a very short 2 lines writes, Ein hechrech lehaniach. There is absolutely no need to assume, right? There's nothing compelling us to believe that the death of Sarah Imenu was close to the Akedah. Right? It could very well be that Abraham came to Hebron from Beersheba, or from Har Moriah, But he says, Lafi pshuto shel mikra, right? According to the simple reading of the text, they spent a lot of time in Beersheba, and then years later they came back to Hebron and she died. Right? He essentially, with a swipe of his pen, right, says there's absolutely no reason to believe that that medrash is accurate and the timeline is true. And with that, he dismisses the theological conundrum which is presented by that medrash. Right? How does it that the Akedah results in something so terrible? And he simply tells us you don't have to believe that. Right? There's nothing compelling one to believe it. And I think that's probably driven by the difficulties that he has with that medrash. Right. The other piece, of course, is that there is one little separating piece between the Akedah and the death of Sarah, even in the text, but that's not his concern. His concern, I think, is more, interesting in putting down that we can kind of just push that medrash off to the side, and right, we don't have to deal with it. Give me one other. If you look in Psukim, look at 10 and 11, Yud and Yud Aleph. Right, Be'efron Yoshek b'toch b'nei Chet, Vayan Ephron hachiti ad Abraham. Right, that Ephron turns to Abram be'oznei b'nei Chet within earshot of all the people of Chet. L'chol ba'ei sha'ar iro lemor. Right, to all of the people of the city. Right, etc. Right, why is this being done? Right, he wants to know. It's in front of everybody. If you look back at Zion and Chet, right, Abram does the same thing. Vayakam Abraham, this is still on one side. Vayakam Abraham vayishtachu lo am haaretz libnei Chet. Right, he goes to the people of Chet. Right, and then he says, "Well, introduce me to Ephron, and Ephron will give me the thing." And then he could find Ephron, like, just go and ask. Why does he go to the townspeople? So it could be he had no idea what it was, but he argues that Abraham wanted to do this in public, so that everybody would know that there was some advantage in doing it in public, so that everybody would know that Abraham owns this and this is his land, and on we go. All right, let's jump now to the second part of the parsha, and that is finding a wife for Yitzchak. So here his introduction is much smaller, but he notes it would have been wise, right, for Abraham to marry somebody locally. Right, you expand your territory, you form allegiances. Right, that's how it was done, and at some level, that actually would have made a tremendous amount of sense. Why doesn't Abraham do that?
Because he wants spiritual input, not materialistic input.
Correct. And that's the point, right? The entire point of the story is that we choose, I guess, spirituality over political expediency. Now, that message throughout time probably has ramifications throughout history, but the choices we make, right, have to be the right halachic choices, the right spiritual choices. Doing things that might hurt us spiritually for political expediency is not a good idea. Now, each person will actually have a different example of how to apply that in practice. So I'm going to leave the examples out, right? Because depending on what you believe and how you think, but it is an important message that Abraham could have gained tremendously from a local shidduch, right? It would have really put him on the map. Right? It would have done great things for him locally. He would have joined forces. They would have had a larger family. They would have more power, more property. But it just wasn't important. That wasn't what he needed. He needed somebody who would be a matriarch to the people, who would be a spiritual force, right? He needed Rivka, and he didn't, not somebody who was local idolater.
Rabbi, I have a
Yes.
question. Wasn't it the case that his family who were left behind, they were idolaters, weren't they?
They came from a family of idolaters.
So
here-
therefore, what was the advantage in?
I'm gonna make Ernest happy if I can recall this correctly. Right, because who am I gonna quote, Ernest?
You a clear car on this?
There you go, the Kliyakar. Uh-oh. Jeff's playing with my computer. I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what I'm doing.
Trying to get that.
Doing.
It's, hold on. All right, time out. We're gonna connect the speaker. Or we won't. All right, while Jeff is playing with that, I'll keep going. If I remember correctly, the Kliyakar says, right, that that his family is idolaters, but we're connected for audio. Shkoyach, Jeff. By taking them out of their home and bringing them to the home of Abraham, you remove them from their setting and you can influence them and they won't be influenced by their family. If you take somebody local from Canaan, they will be a part and parcel of the Canaanite idolatry, and that wouldn't be good. I'm pretty sure that's the Kliyakar, but I wouldn't put money down on that.
And I'm ashamed to say I don't remember.
Uh-oh, don't be ashamed if I can't, but I think that's right, but that does make, Charles, to answer your question, everybody then was an idolater.
Right.
Right? But if you take a local person, they're steeped the local idolatry, it's hard to remove them. If you take somebody out from their home and bring them to you, you'll have a better chance, right? Especially if you find the right person, that they can totally disconnect from their family and join the family of Abraham.
Okay, thank you. That does make sense.
There you go. So the other thing, other fact, at least, there's a lot, but I'm trying to just pick and choose a few things.
Something or other. This guy.
Right, when you have the Shavua, so if you look, chapter 24, this should be verse, right? Sukkim Bay, I guess. Right, let's start with Pasuk Beis. Right, or Gimel, Vayomer Abraham al Abdo Zakan Beito Moshel B'Chol Asher Lo. Right, Abram tells the person in charge of the house, I'm just going to call him Ezra for now, for simplicity's sake. Right, Simna Yadcha Tachat Yerechi. Right, put your hand on my thigh. Be'ashpiach Hashem Elokei Hashamayim Elokei Haaretz. Right, I swear. Right, I give you an oath by the God of the heavens and the God of the earth. Shaloti kachi shalibni mi benot haKna'ani. You cannot take somebody for Yitzchak from the Canaan. But here it is: put your hand on my thigh, and you're swearing in the name of Elokei Hashamayim Elokei Haaretz. Where else do we have family members casting oaths on one another in the book of Bereshis?
Yaakov and Yosef.
Yaakov and Yosef, that's one. And the second, same ballpark.
Oh,
Yosef and his
Esav and
brothers,
Yaakov. Yeah.
right? Both regarding being
The
brought
birthright.
to burial in the land of Israel. So if you turn now to chapter 47, right, verse 29, still in Bereshis. I will get a page in a moment on the sheet. Chapter 49, verse 47, verse 29. 268 you're online, it's probably easier to get to. Right, so this is when Yaakov tells Yosef to bury him by Yikruvu Yimei Yisrael Lamut, right? Yaakov's days are numbered, he's going to die. Vayikra livno Yosef, he calls his son Yosef, right, I found favor.
Over a little bit, please.
Simna yadcha tachat yerechi, right? Put your hand on my thigh. Asita imadi chesed ve'emet, al na tikbereni b'Mitzrayim. Right? Do for me an eternal kindness. Do not bury me in Egypt. All right. And he says, great. Vayom vayisha, right? Vayisha balo. That's time number 2. Time number 3 is in chapter 50, verse 24.
Yosef and his brothers. Right?
Yosef.
288. Right? Vayomer Yosef el Achav. Yosef says to his brothers, Anochi meit ve'Elohim pakod yifkod etchem. Right? V'ha'aleh etchem in ha'aretz hazah. Hashem's going to remember you. He's going to take you out of the land, right, to the land that he promised to our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Vayashba Yosef and Bnei Yisrael lemor. Right? Yosef swears the Bnei Yisrael, I mean his brothers, take my bones out from that. Those are the three times. What he points out is there are actually significant differences, but what are the differences that stand out in those? There's three times an oath is administered, but there are differences. What are the differences? What's missing in the last one? Let's start with that.
Put your hand-
The thigh. Right? Meaning you have it. That seems to be the way you take a shvua in Bereshis. Right? Whether it's the thigh or some other part of your anatomy, right? Becomes an argument in the commentators.
But in Yosef's case, the people he's adjuring will not be alive when it's time to fulfill the oath.
Well, that's why does that.
How do they make an oath for the future generations?
Right. So,
Maybe it's
okay.
different.
Right. So Jeff wants to know, I think we're hitting on the same, right, the same point. But does that explain, I mean, if you want the oath to be powerful, right, what's the difference? So you're giving us one difference, but what's the difference between Eliezer and Abraham, Yaakov and Yosef and his brothers, right? So that in the first two, there is a placing of the hand on the thigh versus the third. So the most important part, which he does for us, right? There are other differences also, by the way.
well,
Head of household
relative
versus the
power.
next.
I mean, it just Elokea Shamayim Elokea Aretz, which you don't have here or there, right? So there are differences, but I think the most important thing he's done for us is he's set up here are the three times an oath is given, and you should look at them, see why they're different. Now, the one question he addresses, which is the one that we'll limit ourselves to, is why by the third case of Yosef and his brothers is there no placing of a hand on a thigh? So Ernest's suggestion is because it really wasn't them.
Hmm?
We buy that?
Generations.
Do we like that? We don't like that? What do we think? Don't all answer at once.
For it to be a promise, it should be the same.
Right, Steve says for it to be a binding promise, it should be a form. I mean, the question of why it is transferable to future generations is a question whether or not you're going to, no matter how the promise is made, that's still going to be a question. It does explain, though, if you look in those psukim, right? Vayashpa Yosef et Bnei Yisrael. That's pasuk chav hey. Pasuk chav daled is Vayomer Yosef el Achav. Yosef says to his brothers, but he swears onto Bnei Yisrael. And that's the answer, by the way, right? Because what transfers down? Bnei Yisrael. They are his brothers, but they're the head of the tribes, and they are Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael can be held to this oath. So but again, maybe that's a possible answer, right? It's not them. What else could we come up with? What else would you suggest? He doesn't have a good answer.
He's only asking
The head of the
to fulfill the
household.
oath. When God takes them out, something has to happen. Whereas in each case, I guess Yaakov has to die, but in each case, once they've taken the oath, the other cases, once they've taken the oath, they can go and get on with it. Pretty much. I know Yaakov has to die first, but he dies pretty quickly afterwards. So in those cases, they can go ahead and get on with it. Whereas here, this is going to be
Right, but does that explain, what I'm looking for is something to explain the difference in the manner of oath. So I'll make a suggestion. I wouldn't swear to it, but think about the relationship between the people who are taking this oath.
The first two are head of household.
Their peers,
And Yosef is already to brothers.
Yaakov.
their peers, yeah.
Right, Yaakov is not head of household. Yaakov is a
So
guest.
yeah. Father,
Yaakov, the
son.
guest,
Are they close
but
or are
he's
they
very-
not close?
He's very.
Right, putting your hand on somebody's thigh or elsewhere is a very intimate gesture. Maybe one more intimate than the other, but those are intimate gestures. It is possible that Yosef just, I mean, what was Yosef's, Avram and Eliezer are very close, there's no question, right? Their relationship is solid, they go and rescue, they do a lot, that's a good, he's trusting him to find a wife for Yitzchak, right? Yaakov and Yosef are certainly fans of each other. There is an intimacy in that relationship. Yosef and his brothers,
Also, this is a group, but it's also a group, so it'd be little.
But they're Rabbi, they're
more to go
peers.
around.
They're
sorry.
the brothers are peers. Eliezer was not a peer of Abraham, and Yaakov and Yosef weren't peers. The brothers and Yosef were peers.
Not in that moment, right?
Oh.
Meaning in that moment, Yosef is the viceroy of Egypt, and they're at his whim,
Mm.
right? To again, I think, and I wouldn't put money on this one either, but it is possible that, right, there's just an intimacy that's lacking. Yaakov and Yosef they're not on good terms. They do not end on good terms, right? We leave the end of Bereshit. We don't even know if Yosef still wants to kill them. Maybe he does. He says he doesn't. They're afraid he will. They're still afraid he's going to kill them at the end of Bereshit.
Yeah.
Right? Because they
Yeah.
make up the lie that says, "Oh, my father said, don't harm us after he's dead." Now, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but probably he didn't. They're still nervous. Now, for good reason, they're nervous, right? We know Yosef is Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef is righteous. He's not going to do it. They don't know that, right? They have no idea what he really believes and what he feels. So that's, again, one possible difference.
So why didn't Yosef just, well, it's off the point, why didn't Yosef just make his own sons swear? Anyway, it's off the point, sorry.
No, because I think that's because everyone's going to be gone. He wanted Bnei Yisrael to take the oath, right? He wanted it to be in that national, right? If you look at it, I mean, I just mentioned, but those two psukim, Vayomer Yosef el Achav, he said to his brothers, Vayashba Bnei Yosef Bnei Yisrael.
Yeah.
I think that's the critical point. It's going from the brothers, they are the brothers, but they're also the heads of the tribes representing Bnei Yisrael.
Yeah.
A national oath can be passed down.
Yeah.
Right, a personal oath, maybe not. And maybe that's the answer also, right? Maybe a national oath is different than a personal oath, and a personal oath is on a thigh, and a national oath is different. But it is at least worth, his point at looking at the three oaths and comparing them, I thought was a valuable point. Okay. Perek Chav Hey. Let's just jump to the end. I'll share with you a couple of thoughts on the end of the parsha. Right, and this is, it's page 120, chapter 25, verse 1. Right, you get a lot of detail about Abraham's escapades after the death of Sarah, and we found a wife for Yitzchak. Right, it seems to me that's the end of the Abraham story, but it's not. By Yosef Abraham Yikach Isha Shma Keturah. Right, Abraham takes a woman whose name is Keturah, and they have children, Zimra and Yakshem, etc. Right, etc. And then they have children, and then to the children of these Pilashim, Abraham gives presents, and he sends them away, and then we knock off Abraham, and the story ends. What is that doing there? Why is this section including Keturah and Keturah's children? She's a concubine. Abraham sends the kids away, gives them some presents.
Because in the future, what's going to happen from those children?
What was that? I missed that. Say that again.
In the future, what's going to happen from those children?
What is going to happen with those children? Except for no, meaning most of these children we're never going to hear from again. Right? Zimran, Yakshan, Midan. Midian we hear about. Yishbak, Suach, Yakshan, Shva, Dedan. Right? These are not people we ever hear from again.
But he's promised many descendants.
he has promised many descendants.
And just get there,
Well, but he sends them all.
Well, I mean, we are his descendants. We're many.
but not as many as, in numbers of the world, we're not that many.
Right. So the first thing that he notes, which is fascinating, because he says if Avram now is 140 and he lives till 175, he said based on calculations of life expectancy in his time, which was in the 19th century, that would put Avram about 56 years old in our years. So we shouldn't be surprised that he can still have children. That was the first thing he found that was noteworthy to say, that we should understand this isn't a miracle. This is just natural life.
So you just dismissed the whole miracle that Hashem gave children to Abraham and Sarah.
Well, the issue was never with Abraham, right? I mean, the miracle was that Sarah was postmenopausal and then she wasn't. That was the miracle, right?
Okay.
And the fact that Abraham has children with Hagar shows us that Abraham never, the issue was not with Abraham.
Right, but he was younger. I thought you were addressing the age issue.
Yeah,
But so he is, and he's saying it's not so crazy, right? If you do 140 out of 175, you do the proportions. I don't know how long they lived in his time, but he says it's about 56 years old in our year. So he is downplaying the miracle. This is not about the miracle of Abraham having children,
Okay.
right? Because if it was a miracle, it would be for Yitzchak, right? For the continuity. So he gives Steve's answer. One is that Avram is promised to be an Av Hamon Goyim, and this is a fulfillment of that promise, right? The other thing he says is, and if you look in the Psukim, right, this also seems clear. He sends away the other children, but in Pasuk Hey, Vayitein Abraham et kol asher lo li Yitzchak. Right? Everything is given to Yitzchak. So even though Avram has other children, right? The more children he has, the choice of Yitzchak and Yitzchak alone becomes even more outstanding. And therefore, the lineage of Keturah and the other children are there to cement the legacy and status of Yitzchak as Yitzchak being the chosen child.
And to remind everyone, they weren't sent away with nothing. They shouldn't.
They weren't sent away with nothing.
No, they were sent away with presents.
They were sent away with presents. But that's an opinion. But according to him, that's an important. The point is, I mean, nobody's saying we should mistreat them. They're taken care of, but they're not the continuity of the line of Abraham Avinu. Everything is given to Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the one. No matter how many more Abraham has, Yitzchak is still the one, and that's why this piece is here. Not only to tell us about the progeny, the Ab Hamon Goyim, the father of the multitudes, which is Abraham, but to cement the status of the legacy of Yitzchak.
Right, but everything had already been given to Yitzhak. Eliezer says so expressly when he meets Rivka's family.
And this is just doubling down.
Okay.
Right, and I think that this makes sense, and I'll tell you why. Right, I think answer 2 is more sense than answer 1 because of its placement in this parsha. Right, the placement of this parsha is about securing the future. The story of Abraham ends at the Akedah. That is the penultimate test. That's where Abraham's story really ends. Right, then you have to take care of Sarah to bury her. That's about burying Sarah. Then it's about finding a wife for Yitzchak. I mean, this parsha is a transition away from Abraham. It makes sense that it's more about Yitzchak than it is about Abraham.
If this is happening after Yitzchak gets Rivka, then it could be a challenge to the possessions. I mean, even if Eliezer is correct in saying it's all his, well, yeah, at the time, but the future kids are born, it could throw a wrinkle in it.
And that's
what solves this.
Right.
So I'm just saying they're post.
Right, but my point is, if it was just about material possessions, I don't think it would be in the Chumash. Right, if it's who inherits Abraham's sheep, I don't think we really care. I mean, I might care, but we don't care for for posterity. You know, if it's just an argument over his estate, I don't know that it gets a place in the Chumash. If it's an argument for the spiritual being, who is the spiritual heir of the house of Abraham, that has a place in the Chumash.
Well, isn't it one son that came,
So
may have come back? Ishmael's
Well,
still alive.
Yishmael comes back, but he's also not the spiritual heir of the house of Abraham. That's Yitzchak.
He seems to be more connected to Abraham than these other children. But
Yes.
it says right here also. This isn't made as to her.
Yes,
That he does show up. He's the only other child who shows up to the
to
funeral.
the funeral. Yeah, again, I don't know what Abraham's relationship was with the children of his concubines. That's a fair question. I don't know, but I think for it to be included in the Chumash, it should be it's not just about who gets the money, right? It's about who follows the descendant, who is the line. I'll just give you one last thought, and then I'll take any questions. He is not convinced at all that Keturah is Hagar.
Mhm.
Right, that is the Medrash, and I think Rashi quotes it.
Yeah, it does.
Hang on a
It does.
second.
It does.
Does Rashi quote it?
He does. He does.
He does, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Zuhar.
Yeah, Zuhagar. I just had on my reading glasses. Right, that is an argument in the Rishonim. His position is, despite the fact that it says so in Bereshis Rabbah, he just writes Ein Zeh Mistaber. It doesn't make sense that after being thrown out of the house, right, the moment that Sarah dies, you're going to bring back the one that she threw out. That's like not very nice. All right, and therefore he argues that it's just somebody else. Why the Medrash says it is Hagar? That's a fair and good question.
I heard one Midrash said it's because of Yitzchak trying to reunite the family.
So Hirsch says that. I don't know if the Medrash says it. Medrash could, right? Samson Raphael Hirsch says, he lost his wife. Right? I was sitting with somebody yesterday, this morning, the day before, after 55 years, lost his wife, and he was inconsolable. It's very hard. Right? And then Hirsch says, no, Yitzchak just wanted his father to be happy again. But still, that's like a big diss to Sarah. Like, had this fight, she didn't treat her well, they threw her out of the house. God said, throw her out of the house, and then she dies when we bring her back. So I think that's why it doesn't happen. It says, no, it's not, it's somebody else, and let it be somebody else. All right, with that, I will close. I'm happy to take any questions.
So none of his other descendants and the people he influenced remain monotheistic.
Well, Yishmael is a monotheist,
Okay.
right?
None of, as far as Midian and everybody else.
I mean, those people are lost to the dustbin of history. I have no idea. What was that?
No, I like to think those people are lost in the dustbin of history.
They certainly are. I didn't think I'd make that. I did not make that phrase up. I don't know where it's from. I didn't make it up. I promise. All right. With that, I wish everyone a good night.
Thank
Next
you.
week, Parshat Toldos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're
And I-
welcome.